Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's that. I don't think he's the brightest person alive. I think somebody probably told him, hey, we could pretend as if our fingerprints aren't on this and let Israel do it. And Israel can do the job.
He bought into it, right?
Yeah, and he bought into it. I kept saying, I said,
he's giving
Iran is going to have
Adelson, giving Netanyahu what they want, paying off his creditors.
I kept saying Iran is going to have to take its respect at the barrel of a gun every bit as much as Russia did.
Now,
And here we are.
right now the burden has started to shift. Russia has been bearing the direct war burden for the last 3+ years. Now, from a cold, let's put aside our sympathy for the Iranian people, for the Iranian state, for the Palestinians. Right? Let's descend into the black-pilled, cynical world of real politics.
I know exactly what you're going to say. Go ahead. I know what you're going to say.
This is good for Russia.
Yeah.
Right.
I know exactly what you're going to say. By the way, nobody was talking about Zelensky, right? He's off the pages. Russia can do whatever the hell it wants.
So, 2 caveats. One, assuming that the Iranian government survives, right? And 2, that it doesn't go nuclear. Short of those 2 things, which would be bad for us, we can all agree, as long as this falls short of those 2 events, this is good for Russia. So 1, the price of oil is already going crazy. When the markets in the U.S. open, it's going to be a bloodfest, right? And
painful day. And
that's great for Russia. Russia's budget is balanced, right, at the moment, effectively, with a very low price of oil. Price of oil keeps climbing. That's just the extra cash in the war coffers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's great. So on that hand, and always high oil prices hurt the United States. They're also going to hurt China, by the way, right? But even Iran itself, right? Lots of gas and oil, right? The price of gas is also going to be affected by this, because one of the things that the Israelis have hit is the South Pars gas field, which is actually the largest gas field in the world, right? And so they said partially. I don't know what partially means. Is it 90%? Is it 10%? We don't know these things. It damages fire.
Yeah.
Right. So, but energy prices, big one right there. You don't wage wars without energy, or the U.S. doesn't wage wars with $200 barrels of oil, right? So that's a big thing right there. Number 2, of course, is the armaments, right? Already, was it 2 weeks ago, Zelensky was complaining that anti-drone missiles the Biden administration had created for Ukraine, Donald Trump instead said to U.S. forces. So that's already clear indication, weapons that would have gone to Ukraine. We're going to see a lot more of that, and in particular, air defense missiles, right? They were already not able to supply Ukraine with Patriot interceptors, right? And they certainly can't do so now, right? They're wasting all of these things. And China's watching that too, right? This is one hand, all of this military assets that are wasted there and wasted in Ukraine means that China has more time to prepare and build its strength, to the point where I think we're already at the point where if there was anyone sane in the Pentagon, they would realize they don't have a chance in hell of defeating China anymore off of its own coastline, right, in the Taiwan Strait. I think it's like 5 war games in a row now that the Pentagon has run for that scenario. Yeah, they always lose in their own war games against China, right? So, but Chinese, they always like a safety margin, right? And the longer the wars in Ukraine and now in the Middle East go on, and the U.S. continues to waste military assets, failing once again, as every president since Obama has wanted to pivot to Asia and getting stuck down in the Middle East or Eastern Europe again, they're falling. Once again, China wins by doing nothing, right? I mean, China's going to suffer from the high prices of oil, but
but it's not a war. Yeah.
The other thing is political capital, right? Because there's only so much appetite, even in the United States, for war, right? Within the media, within the political sphere. And no matter how close Ukraine has come to the U.S. and to the U.S. political and the fourth estate propagandist class in the U.S. Israel is more important, right?
Yeah.
Don't mistake the mistress for the wife.
Right.
At the end of the day,
Right.
Zelensky's just the mistress. And times get tight. The mistress is going to get kicked out of that condo. Right?
It's like, I told you I'm not leaving my wife. You got to leave.
Right?
It's like, you have to go.
Right? All this means is that Russia achieves a higher degree of victory, right, with less cost over less time. That's what the cold-blooded, heartless bastards like me that in the Kremlin are seeing right now.
And by the way, just to be clear, they've been making hell of a gains on the ground. The spring offensive is in full swing. Zelensky is screaming about help, complaining about the number of apparently targets that Russia's been hitting. Just in the last few minutes, could you give us a rundown of what has been taking place out of eyeshot, considering, the sunlight has basically drowned out stars? What is going on the battlefield up to this point? From my understanding, Russia's been moving across the entire front.
Oh, yeah. I saw this morning, right? I mean, Russia is continuing advances, significant advances in, first of all, the Sumy region, where the Kiev regime moved they moved troops out of the Sumy region to try to plug the holes in the Konstantinovka Pokrovsk direction in the Donbass, in Donetsk. And from what I've seen, that's still not stopping the Russians. And now in Sumy, they're just steamrolling, right? I saw this morning that Marinka was already taken and that Yanakovka Russian forces are already moving in on significantly. They're assaulting Yanakovka. And that is the road to Sumy, right?
Sumy is about to fall, right?
Yeah, Sumy City, right? They're evacuating Sumy City. So that's all happening much faster than I thought it was. But also in the south, we haven't been talking much. I don't think anyone's been talking a lot about Russia's offensive occurring in the south. And the reports I saw this morning is that Russian forces are already moving into Gulaya Polya. They're assaulting, right? They're moving into the town, and they're closing on Orehov very quickly. So Russian forces in the south are also advancing more rapidly than I thought they were. And the long-range strikes also continues in Ukraine, of course, not quite to the intensity that it was a couple of weeks ago. But other than that, nothing has changed. We do have the word out from Russian intelligence that the Kiev regime and the Europeans are considering more dirty trick provocations, potentially in the Baltics, firing a torpedo at a U.S. ship and claiming it was the Russians, or sea mines, or they've got a number of things cooking up to try to drag the U.S. attention with its short attention span back to Ukraine. But I don't think that's.
I mean, the U.S. has a problem, right?
Has a lot of problems.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems, but
it's an overextended empire.
Overextended. It's like you're playing chess, and it's like the queen has to protect this guy, but the queen also has to protect that guy. All right, you have a problem, right? The queen is like, she has too many responsibilities. And, they partnered themselves with very weak countries in Europe that demand protection, and a ultimately weak country in Israel that demands and needs protection also. And if China, anything,
the conflict in Ukraine, right, of provoking it, was to overextend Russia. And what they succeeded, far more than the opposite, is to overextend themselves and their European allies.
This seems like incompetence to me. Yep. I mean, the idea that you're going to provoke a war. I had a conversation with one of my guests, and I tried to point out to her that, look, just because you don't want to fight doesn't mean you can't fight. Yeah. And it might have been a mistake for Iran not to go through True Promise and continue True Promise 2 when they effectively was going at it. But all things being equal, that doesn't mean that they don't have capability to decimate Israel. And it's wild to me, right? Like every bit of appeasement, whether it was coming out of Russia, whether it was coming out of Iran, has been taken as weakness and an inability to fight, as opposed to we just don't want a war. And yet,
at the end of the day,
stove is hot.
We always underestimate the extent of how ill-informed U.S. decision makers are. These experts that they have on Russia, on Iran, on China, these are all ideological warriors in think tanks, in academia, wherever they are, in policy positions within the government. They all have ideological and career axes to grind, right? Towards, seeing the end game of their chosen opponent, be it Russia, China, or Iran. And they have in very distorted prism of which they see the world, and a very bad assessment. I mean, listen to what these people, have said about Russia and what they believed U.S. sanctions would do. Their misunderstanding of the global markets. They're just they really drink their own Kool-Aid, and then the U.S. government they feed that same Kool-Aid to the people making the actual policy decisions, like ostensibly Trump. And they make bad decisions because at the end of the day, despite having intelligence doesn't help if intelligence is as politicized as we know the U.S. And I think we underestimate the extent to which it is. It's a poison, and I think that particularly when we're talking big picture wise, many of us might be better informed than some of those senior people making decisions in the United States, because we're not being fed that Kool-Aid, right?
Should China take Taiwan? Should China take Taiwan? Black pill, right? Screw it, black pill.
Okay, so
I'm saying that jokingly, kind of.
China also doesn't want World War III.
No, they don't. They don't.
Yeah, and you have to. Trump is a madman, and however, look, if the U.S. moved in a serious way to regime change Iran directly, that is an option that China could take, right?
Interesting.
Right? Sending troops to Tehran? No, not an option. Putting a blockade up around Taiwan? That's an option. Right? Without even going for the full invasion of Taiwan. That is an option that could divert U.S. military focus and political focus and attention away from regime change to there. Russia can play the same game by expanding, the conflict in Ukraine, escalating in a new way there. That are realistic options that Russia and China could do to assist Iran without having Medvedev flying into Tehran on the back of
the bomb with us. Right. Yeah. Right. Dr. Strangelove. Mark, fantastic breakdown, man. Fantastic breakdown. As always, you're deeply appreciated. Mark Sleboda, International Relations Security Analyst. You can follow Mark on Twitter at Mark Sleboda1. You can find him on Boosty, Boosty, B-O-O-S-T-Y. Just
put it in the same. That's another thing, right? It's another website.
Yeah, right. You can catch him on that. Put in his name, Mark Sleboda, or Real Politic.
Yes, you can find it. And please join. We got a community. We got a private Discord channel for discussions among like-minded people. You can speak to me directly there. You can get interviews with me, and I have a whole lot of exclusive content just for those people. Three pieces of exclusive content, including specifically a Q&A answering your questions every week. And may I jump from my cold-blooded Real Politic throne for a minute onto the emotional chair. There was a video going around on Telegram of a dinner party in Lebanon on a rooftop, watching the Iranian missiles come down into Tel Aviv. And they're all standing up in dresses and nice outfits there, filming. And right in the foreground on the roof with them is this guy in, I don't know, some type of robes, playing a saxophone.
I saw that.
I just thought that is both moral, a Schadenfreude on one hand, right? Of seeing the Zionist regime get what they've unleashed onto Lebanon and Palestine and everyone else. And
I feel
also a clear as day, as clear as you want, personification of the madness of the world we live in right there in one little video clip.
It's a rational act. I think it's a rational act. And people think I've gotten far darker. That may be true. I will be love and light when this is over with. Right now, I'm responding to environmental circumstances. They have murdered en masse before our very eyes for 2 years. And the world has effectively said, these are dispensable people, that you can get rid of them, you can kill them, you can burn them alive.
They are committing genocide. They are committing genocide. They are literally starving millions of people to death right now.
Yep. And so when you see finally, oh, wow, Tel Aviv looks like Gaza in certain parts, what does it do? There's a human element in you that says justice. That guy, I don't blame that guy.
Now that I'm in that emotional chair, I do not disagree with you at all.
Yeah. Mark Sleboda, thank you for this, Mark. You be safe, man. Have a good day, okay?
You as well.
All right.